And now that the recording is going, I'll turn it over to the judges.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Candida Steele, and I'm retired as a judge on the U.S. Civilian Board of Contract Appeals. I've handled government contract disputes around the country, and I've been with this program for 20 years. And my colleagues are Richard. Do you want to introduce yourself? You're muted.
Sorry about that. It's first thing in the morning. My name's Richard Leiter. I'm a professor and director of the Law Library at the University of Nebraska College of Law, coming to you live from Lincoln, Nebraska, heart of the heartland. I've been doing this for about 15 years, the state level, and this is my first time on the big show.
All right, good morning. I am Lieutenant Colonel Kurt Mabus. I'm an attorney with the United States Air Force. Richard's from the Heartland, and you all are from the Crossroads of America. I'm an alum of the program. I competed out of the state of Indiana, and I see Ms. Chandler's on here, and I'm actually from Chandler, Indiana, so way down south. So there we go.
Great. And if you could introduce yourselves, kids, we'd love to know who you are.
Good morning, judges. We are Unit 5 from Team Indiana, hailing from Hamilton Southeastern High School in Fishers, Indiana. My name is Jake Weber, and next fall I'll be studying political science at Wabash College.
Good morning, judges. I am Carter Nelson. Next year, I plan to attend Purdue University to study supply chain information and analytics.
Good morning, judges. My name is Donia Zandy, and next year I plan on attending Indiana University Bloomington to double major in political science and criminal justice.
Good morning, judges. My name is Jazraj Denoya. I plan on attending Indiana University Bloomington and major in public management and leadership.
And this year, our wonderful teacher coaches are Miss Janet Chandler and Miss Alana Kane.
Great. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much. So I'll read the questions so we know what we're up to today. It's question number 2. Quote, a Bill of Rights is what the people are entitled to against every government on earth, general or particular, and what no just government should refuse or rest on inference. Do you agree or disagree with Thomas Jefferson? What are the advantages and disadvantages of a national Bill of Rights as compared to state bills of rights? What are the differences between positive and negative rights, and which are more important to the preservation of liberty? You may begin.
Our entire unit agrees with Jefferson's assertion that we should have a Bill of Rights. Politician John Dahlberg Acton stated,
Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli believed individuals are inclined to work towards their own interests, even at the expense of others. People feared government and rulers with Machiavellian tendencies. A Bill of Rights would serve to limit unbridled government power.
Declarations of rights have existed since Magna Carta and guarantee individual rights that may not have been previously stated in other documents. In Roper v. Simmons, Christopher Simmons received the death sentence as a 17-year-old. The Supreme Court expanded upon the precedent set by Thompson v. Oklahoma and ruled that the execution of any minor violates the Eighth Amendment's protections from cruel and unusual punishment.
While our unit agrees with Jefferson, we understand others disagree. Those that align with ideals of Supreme Court Justice James Wilson may believe a Bill of Rights would greatly disadvantage the people. A Wilsonian line of reasoning may lead to people believing those rights not stated within the body of a constitution are already delegated to the people. Additionally, Wilson believed the revolution marked the end of the U.S. aligning with British government ideals. So countries in a post-American Revolution world should not have explicit declarations of rights.
While we appreciate the National Bill of Rights we have today, it has advantages and disadvantages compared to state bills of rights. A National Bill of Rights is an advantage in our federal government because otherwise states would have free reign over decision-making in government. The 14th Amendment allowed for rights to be extended from the Federal Bill of Rights to states through incorporation. In 2019, Timms versus Indiana incorporated the National Bill of Rights protection from excessive fines to the states.
However, the National Bill of Rights has disadvantages since it's unable to be as specific as its state counterparts. The Indiana Bill of Rights has a total of 37 sections, including the right to an education, which is not listed in the United States Constitution. Additionally, we can look to California, where citizens have more protections because of the state constitution's Bill of Rights. Assembly Constitutional Amendment 10 states, "The fundamental human right to housing is hereby declared to exist in this state. This right ensures adequate access to housing for all Californians, offering an increase in protections."
Positive rights are rights given to the people by government, such as the 24th Amendment of the South African Constitution, which grants an environment that is free from harm to residents' health or well-being. Negative rights are prohibitions on government actions, such as the First Amendment, as it forbids government from establishing a religion or prohibiting its free exercise.
Jake, Jazraj, and I believe negative rights are more important to preserve liberty. We believe negative rights successfully limit government, and in doing so, do a better job of ensuring freedom and liberty, as in the Eighth Amendment, which forbids government from inflicting cruel and unusual punishment against guilty parties.
I disagree and think positive rights are more significant to preservation of liberty. Positive rights grant rights and privileges, which preserve liberty, such as the Sixth Amendment, which grants the accused party a right to a speedy public trial and the right to counsel.
Regardless of a positive or a negative right, we all believe in the preservation of rights and liberty. As South African civil rights activist Nelson Mandela stated,
"To deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity." This is the conclusion of our prepared testimony, and we are now ready for follow-up questions.
Canada, you're muted.
Sorry, what do you think was left out of the Bill of Rights?
I think you can go ahead, sorry.
Specifically during the time of when the founders were creating the Bill of Rights, I don't really think they were thinking about women at the time. Obviously, as the times have changed, women have become much more involved in government, and they've been fighting for some of these rights that didn't specifically pertain to them. So I think that in the creation of the Bill of Rights, they definitely left out women as an important part.
Another thing that was left out of the Bill of Rights was very specific detail as to what our rights are. Many of the amendments in the Bill of Rights and further amendments after that have been intentionally vague to ensure that they can be interpreted by the courts rather than having to stick with a specific amendment that may not be able to adjust or adapt with the times.
Let me ask you, what circumstances, if any, would cause a person to lose their rights found in the Bill of Rights, and how could they perhaps get them back?
There are many circumstances that can cause someone to lose their rights. For example, every court case and precedent that we have, someone's rights were violated. They lost their rights in that instant, but they were able to either get them back, or it was determined that it was a legitimate taking away of their rights through litigation or petition of the government.
Similarly, it depends what rights you're looking at, as some may dictate residents of the United States, and so that would pertain to the citizens of the US, and so outside citizens would not be guaranteed these rights. And that has led to major problems, but some guarantee it to all people, such as habeas corpus. And you can look to Boudemine versus Bush, in which Guantanamo Bay Guantanamo Bay prisoners were not granted the writ to a habeas corpus, and that shows that the writ to a constitutional right was disallowed. However, the Supreme Court ruled that it should be allowed to even those that are Guantanamo Bay prisoners.
Since you all came out and stated that you do agree that we need a Bill of Rights, then discuss with me the concern about something like Katz v. US, where the Supreme Court is actually creating rights not found in the original Bill of Rights.
The concern with Katz is that it was a instance of potential judicial activism in which, as you stated, they added rights that are not explicitly stated in the Bill of Rights. And some people fear that this means that the Supreme Court can therefore also take away rights that are not listed in the Bill of Rights against Ninth or 10th Amendment protections. And I think that it is a legitimate question to ask on where the courts should actually have their power. Should they have the power to create rights, or should they only have the power to interpret what is brought to them?
Yeah, and I agree. I think that's a good question to ask, and that's my presentation to you. That's what I'm asking you now. So if you agree so heartily with the Bill of Rights, do you then therefore agree with judicial activism, or would you like to pop the bubble of Katz?
I actually believe that Katz versus US, while it can be perceived as judicial activism because it overturned Homestead versus US of 1928 and allowed for more privacy, I would say that it's not the biggest judicial activism case because it was still interpreting the lines of the Fourth Amendment. I think the concerns of having a Bill of Rights is that even though we intentionally make it vague, or the founders did, so that there's some leeway in interpretation of styles that we have seen post 1920s, is that it still falls within it. But if we didn't have a Bill of Rights, maybe there would be more privacy standards. But on the contrary, that could also mean there's less privacy standards. It's very hard to tell because we've been so inclined to have this system of government where we have declarations of rights.
Additionally, I believe the Bill of Rights was created not necessarily to follow a strict guideline, but to be up for interpretation. I think that through the case of Katz, the court was using its power of interpreting the Bill of Rights to make their decision.
Candida, you are muted. Sorry.
Richard, I've got a cat who's wandering around shoving things on the floor, so I apologize. Richard, have you got a question?
Not
My
off
turn, I'm
the top of
sorry.
my
It's probably
head.
my
I was
turn.
just,
One of the things, go ahead.
Yeah, what's the point? Why do I care about the difference between positive rights and negative rights? Does that matter to me during my analysis of any type of case? Does it matter to the Supreme Court?
It does matter because in the court case of Bostock versus Clayton County, in which a person who identified as being part of the LGBTQ community was fired from his job in the welfare system. And it was ruled that in the courts that under that LGBTQ people are protected under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, in which it will protect people based on race, religion, gender, and now LGBTQ when it comes to employment. So it really does matter because it does help the protections of many people's right. And if you look into an international case, like in India, for example, in which they have went through the largest farmers' protest in human history, or the largest protest in human history, in which farmers were protesting against the laws that were placed in India. And India has principles, they have the rights, many of them are positive and are related to our Bill of Rights, right to equality, right to freedom of religion, and etc. Those are called fundamental rights. And however, the police and the government reacted while tear gassing the protesters and limiting the amount of protesters entering the Capitol. So it is very important to protect those rights, whether it be positive or negative rights.
Thank you.
Additionally,
Go ahead.
I believe in the US national scale, it actually does have a matter as long as you're upholding the justice. Obviously, if you have a corrupt government that chooses to ignore the Bill of Rights like North Korea or China, then it's a moot point. But in the case of the US where we still hold it, you can look towards the Fourth Amendment, which is a negative right. And I believe that's led to interpretations such as Connor versus Graham, which has allowed for police to use more force against those of suspected criminals, of suspected crimes, in the fear that they may be harm themselves. And I think if it was a positive right granting certain rights to the people, then police powers would be lessened and they would have less scrutiny to protect themselves.
Well, so that brings up another thought, which is what's the difference between rights added through the amendment process and those established or defined by a court decision?
I think the main difference between the two types of rights that you're talking about is that the court decisions are based off of what is in the Bill of Rights and what's in the Constitution, but they go much deeper than what's simply listed on the actual document itself. We can see through cases such as Brandenburg versus Ohio, Miller v. California, that there's so much more detail that the courts have been able to go to through the conflicts that arise. And so while yes, it says you have the right to free speech, you don't have the right to absolute free speech. I see my time has expired. Can I?
But that was a beautiful speech you gave. Thank you. Thank you all. What a wonderful job.
Good job.
Just a great job. Fantastic. Richard, do you want to start? Feedback?
Sure. Yes. Thank you very much for that presentation. That was very informative. It was very thorough. You guys all felt very comfortable with the subject matter. It's a tricky subject. What is the difference between positive and negative rights? We judges were talking about that before we came in here today, and we don't have a real clear answer to which is more important either. It's a philosophical question that'll go on forever. You guys did a good job of handling it, and clearly you understand it. So you should be very proud of yourselves. Thank you.
Kurt?
Yes, thanks. So you may not believe it, but whenever I see Indiana, so I've judged it quite a few years now. Whenever I see Indiana, I actually get more nervous than you all do. And I don't know if I want to live up to the alumni name or not, but I thought you all did a wonderful job. I was shaking, but you all just dove right into the depth of it, and that really just kind of grounded me. I know this isn't about me, but my point is that you had such a depth of understanding that I was able to just get so lost in what we were discussing, and I thought that was wonderful. Great material, good depth, good breadth. Thanks for not just being focused on the Hoosier impact, but going out to California. And that's the challenge of this, is that it is sweeping. When you talk about, it asks about the difference between, the state Bill of Rights, and now you got to go out and you got 50 plus to worry about, because they're the extras to talk about. And you did a wonderful job of trying to incorporate it without getting too big and complex that we couldn't have a conversation. So thank you very much.
I agree. That was an absolutely wonderful presentation, and I'm sorry I got all flummoxed over whose turn it was to ask a question. You did just an astonishing job. Talking about Guantanamo Bay in India were just wonderful examples that really fulfilled what you were trying to express. They were wonderful examples. And what has been left out? Well, women. Thank you. Duh. That covers a whole range of an umbrella. So thank you. You did it technically and intellectually. You did an absolutely stunning job. You also presented beautifully. Each one of you was clear and concise. And I'm particularly interested in you all, especially those who are going on to political science. I just want to let you know that the reason I'm involved in this program is my cousin 20 years ago was on the Colorado team doing Unit 1 and went on in political science to Oxford and has gotten his PhD. So, and Kurt's a lieutenant colonel, so you've got a lot of room to expand and grow on this experience. And it's very clear from the way you've presented that you're absolutely enchanted and fascinated by all of this, and it shows, and it's going to keep you company all the rest of your lives. Clearly, you'll read the paper, you'll vote every chance you get, you'll involve your families, and what I really hope is that some of you will end up representing the rest of us, because you certainly know more than anybody in my law school class was able to express. And I'll be feeling just fine sitting in my rocking chair in my nursing home, knowing that you all have taken over. And I'm going to look at these names. I'll be looking for these names down the road. Okay. You did a really fabulous job. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Good job.